All right, let's take a look at how to draw stick figures on canvas, right? And here I just did a loop and it's a bunch of the same people. But the cool thing is, if you notice, if I make this bigger, it actually redraws the amount of people that can fit on the canvas. Same thing if I make it smaller. It gets re-rendered and the people get erased. Okay. All right, so let's see how we can go from scratch to this right here. And this is very, very basic stuff. All right, we're gonna start with a blank canvas. I set the CSS style to 20 pixels rich, royal blue. Canvas.height and width is 90%. Change it to grid and place the whole canvas in the center. Right, this is the shortcut for display flex. Display grid saves you one line. Here's the line width. All right, now before we start drawing a bunch of people, let's start with drawing one person. But even before that, let's do our variables first. So between a bunch of people, there should be a gap of about 20 pixels. Okay. All right, now we're gonna do const person width. How fat or how wide is this person going to be? I would just say 60. Now every variable below this person width, I want it to scale, so its value will be dependent on line 15 right here. So let's see, I can do const, uh, let's do person height, and that should be person width times 2. Const, let's do arm length, like how long are each of the arms on the x-axis, right? And I think the arm should be about person.width times 0.3. So just 30% of it, right? Const leg length, how long would the legs be? And I'll say, let's just have it be half of the person width. Person width divided by 2. Yeah. Now we have to draw a face too. So we need like a radius. Const face radius will be equal to, I would say, a third of the person width. Okay. And then remember, we need the two eyes as well. So const eyes radius, and eyes radius will just be face radius divided by 2, right? Because the eyes should be a lot smaller than the face. So face radius divided by 2. All right, and I think that's all we need for now. Actually, just one more const initial y position. Let's make this, I would say 50 is good. So how would we figure this out? Well, you take this divided by 60. So we would actually have 50 over 60, right, times person width. And we can simplify 50 over 60 to 5 over 6, just like that. And you might think, wow, this is a bunch of variables. Why can't we just start putting like random numbers instead? Okay. But you're going to see once we're done, if we change the person width, everything else will scale properly. If we don't do this, it's not going to scale properly. All right, let's actually start our drawing. All right, now let's do our background. And that's pretty easy. You can just do ctx dot fill rect for a rectangle. And then you can just do 0, 0 to canvas.width, canvas.height, and this will ensure that everything gets filled up. Oh, and I don't like black, ctx dot, I think it was fill style, aqua. There you go. Okay. Now we can also make this background in CSS, but I hate CSS, so we're just gonna do it this way. Okay. So now let me tell you something. By default, our 0, 0 origin coordinate is in this top left corner right here where my mouse is. Okay. But this is weird because we're drawing stick figures on the bottom. So it would be a lot better if we can somehow move our starting 0, 0 coordinates from the top left to the bottom left. Okay. So how do we do that? We can do that with ctx dot translate 0 because the x-axis is not moving, right? This is still x0 and the bottom is still x0. But the y-axis does move. So the y-axis, how much do we move? We want to move it all the way to the bottom of the canvas. So that's going to be canvas.height. Yeah. All right, now another thing I want to change is because by default, when you do a negative y value in JavaScript, that's actually going to go up, but I want negatives to go down. So it should remind you of seventh grade 2D coordinates, right? Because that's what I'm comfortable with. So I'm going to do that. And you can do that by the scale, right? For the x-axis, it's already positive going to the right. So we're just going to leave it as 1. Its scaling factor is being multiplied by 1, so nothing changes. But for the y-axis, it will be multiplied by -1, right? So now if you have a negative y coordinate, it's going to go down instead of up. And we can actually prove this now. We can go to ctx.move to 0, 0, and it should be at the bottom. And then let me do ctx dot, not line width, dot line 2. Let's say 150, 150. And then ctx dot stroke. And then you're going to see that we move this to the bottom. If I comment out the translate and the scale, it's going to start right here by default on the top, right? And since I didn't flip the scale, the positive y is actually going down instead of up, right? So we need these two lines. Okay, let's start drawing our person. All right, let me move this. And what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to do a second translation. Our 0, 0 is on the bottom left, but I want to move it here in the middle. The reason is that once you start putting a for loop, the translate itself will scale and then place all the people at the right spaces apart, right? All right, so let's see how we can do this. ctx.translate. On the x-axis now, it will be the gap between each person plus the person width. For the y-axis, we can leave it as 0. And if I move this down here and I uncomment it, you see that the origin is 0, 0 now. So let's start drawing our person. We're going to move to, instead of 0, 0, 0 to the init y position. So there's a little bit of space, right? And instead of going from 150 to 150, let's go from 0, right, which is right here, and let's do person height, just like that, okay? Now, let's see. This is one person, but we want 3 people. Equals 0. And then later on, I'll show you how to scale it depending on the inner width as well. But for now, let's do 3 people. So simple for loop, and then I move everything inside. And it works, right? And the reason it's working is that because each time you call translate inside of the for loop, the translate stacks on itself. So the first line is here, then translate to the third line. Cool, right? All right, we have the torso. Let's draw the arms, legs, eyes, and mouth. All right, and since right now our cursor is right at the top, we can go ahead and draw the 2 arms like this. Okay, so before we call ctx.stroke, we already have line 2 to the person height. We can do ctx.line2 to where? To the negative value of the arm length. And the y value will be person height. I say times 0.6. Let's see. Times 0.8. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Right? Okay, so our cursor is now right here. Okay, so I'm going to move back to 0 person height. So I'm going to do ctx.move2, and I'm going to paste this in. Whoops, 2 parentheses, doesn't work. All right, and then now I'm just going to ctx.line2. I'm going to copy this. But to do it on the right side, all you have to do is flip the sign like this. And now we have our 2 arms, right? Let's get started with drawing the face on top of the arrow right here. Okay, let's do our face. ctx.arc. And for now, let's just do the initial coordinates at 0, 0, because I want to show you something. The radius is in our variable face radius. The starting angle is 0. The final angle is 360, aka math.pi times 2. And then ctx.stroke. Let's see this. Whoa, why is there a line right here? That's because we forgot ctx.begin path. Okay, now our circle is in the wrong place, right? Because it's at 0, 0. That's why you see half the circle. How do we move it up to here? We don't have to use move to because arc comes with its own starting coordinates. We're going to leave the x alone. How are we going to do the y? Well, the y is going to be, I think it's init y plus the person height. Let's see. I don't think you need init y because person height covers that. Let me see. Okay, good. And then let's do plus face radius. Perfect, right? So now we have the body, the arms, and the head. Now, I'm gonna show you how to draw the eyes, but before that, let me comment. Let's see, head, and then this will be torso plus 2 arms. And then down here, let's do our eyes next. All right, for the eyes, let me just copy this and paste it. Okay, you see that it got darker because it's drawing on the same coordinates, right? But for the eyes, let's see. First of all, let me change this back to 0, 0. Okay. And then instead of face radius, I think we had eyes radius. Something like that, right? Okay, how do we move it up to here? What if we do person height? Cool. What about person height plus eyes radius? Cool. And then how do we move it to the left? And eyes radius is a little bit big. What if I divide it by 3? Okay, good. So the y is correct. How do we move it on the left side, right? What happens if we move it by negative eyes radius? Cool, right? And this should be plus eyes radius. What? It's not looking correctly. What if I do plus face radius? Perfect, right? Now the eyes are correct. And since the left eye is correct, the right eye is just the reciprocal. Not reciprocal, just the opposite. Perfect, right? So now all we need left is the mouth. And the mouth we can draw with a half circle using math.py. Okay, let's see how we can get that done for mouth. Okay, let's do the mouth. I'll paste here. We begin path, change the stroke style to red, and then we're gonna stroke. And I know there's 2 red ones. I'll show you how to fix it in just a minute. So first, let's do our mouth. How do we do our mouth? ctx.arc. Right now, let's just do 0, 0. The radius, let's make it 5, 0. Math.py, we don't need times 2. Okay, and if I put true right here, we get a smiley face. Okay, and let me move this up a little bit so you can see it. It's right here. So how do we move it up correctly? Let's do person height. Let's see where that goes. Okay, and then I say plus 20. Plus 10. Perfect. I say 12. Cool. All right, now let's talk about this problem. Why is this one red but the black, but the mouth is red, and then these 2 are red? Because right here, its default is black. Once the for loop gets to the first red, the mouth is red. And then every other loop, it still has the stroke style of red, right? So right here, before we do anything else, ctx.stroke_style is equal to black. Oops, I can't type today. Okay, but why is this guy still have a red? That's because we didn't do ctx.beginPath at the beginning of a loop, right? Because remember, when you set stroke style, it will keep it until you set it again to a different color. Right? All right, so we have everything else. Now, all we need is the 2 legs that go all the way down to the bottom if we want. Let's do that. I'll do legs right here. Okay, once again, oh my God, I don't know why that happened. ctx.beginPath. And then we need to do ctx.move2. Where are we moving to? 0 and the initial y position. So now our pencil is right here at the bottom of the torso, right? And then from here, we can simply do ctx.line2. Line 2 what? The negative leg length, and the y should be 0. Okay. Oh, I forgot ctx.stroke. Like that, right? And then we can literally copy these 2 lines, put them here, because we need to move back, right? And then we can change this negative leg length to a positive leg length, right? And now we have our three guys. The next step is, well, we need to figure out how JavaScript can detect how wide our canvas is, and then it's going to fill in the correct amount of people depending on the width. Okay, let's see how we can do that. Okay, let's get to work on how we can fill all of the width in with the right amount of people. Okay. So right here, we're doing a loop of 3, but instead, let's figure out how many max people there are. Okay. And the max people will be equal to the canvas dot width divided by what? Divided by the person dot width plus the gap between each person. And then I'm going to round this down with a double tilde. And then right here, instead of I less than 3, I less than the max amount of people. Okay. Now we're almost done. The only thing we're missing is that if I try to resize, it doesn't get bigger and more people do not get filled in, right? So how can we do that? Well, we can do that with window.onResize. But the thing about Canvas is if you change the width or height of the canvas with resize, it stops painting. Okay. So we have to come up with a way to do that. Let's go. All right. Before we work on our resizing function, let's do some cleanup. Inside of render, I'm going to move these 3 lines, the translate, the scale, and the max people. Because remember, we're going to call render several times as we resize. So we need to do that. Okay, so we have that here. Let's work on our resize function right here. Window dot on resize is an anonymous function. Now, whenever we resize, we need to make sure that our canvas height and width will scale properly with the windows inner width and height. Then we know at the end, we need to call the render function to repaint it. Okay, so after we change the canvas width and height, we need to do ctx.clearRect. We need to clear the rectangle. 0, 0, canvas width, canvas height. Okay. Now, after we clear the rectangle, we need to do ctx.fillRect because we need to redraw it. And you can use the same one. Okay. And then I know our line width was 3. We need to redeclare it, right? Because when you clear the canvas, it clears the line width too. So line width is equal to 3. All right. If we look on the left, oh, we also need to redo our aqua. ctx.fillStyle aqua. This. Okay, so now whenever you move, if this gets bigger, it draws more people. If it gets smaller, the people get erased. Cool, right? All right. I hope that's it. And let me show you something else. If here at the end of render, right here, you can do ctx.translate 0, and then let's say 20. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's supposed to be in here. Right. So now, if at the end of the for loop you translate by 20 pixels in height, you can actually have your people start to be put at 20 pixels, increasing every single person, right? Now, what happens if you want this to start at the middle? If we scroll all the way up to our where is it? Let me close this. So this is our first translate, right? If we translate to just the middle of the canvas, then we can have something like this. Cool, right? And if you know more math formulas, you can play around with this. You can do math.random, right? And then times 1 or times -1, depending on that. And then that's how you can put all of these guys at random coordinates throughout the canvas. Okay, that's all for now.